Okay. Hello, guys. How are you? This is Rudy Lozano, broker for PRG Platinum. Today, after a long week of training, um, I'm covering, which is usually considered the most difficult part in real estate if you're involved in a transaction that involves intermediary. So I'm going to recap the week of what we've done. On Monday, we've covered um, listing agreements, and the position that we're taking as PRG Platinum is to negotiate from a position of strength. The maximum allowable commission on a trade transaction when there's FHA, VA, USDA, and conventional. A paper conventional financing is 8%. So why not? Um, if you're a full service real estate agent and a full service real estate firm, why not charge 6 and 7 and 8% if housing and urban development will allow you to? So, so once again, negotiate from a position of strength when you're taking on the listing. Because once again, not only do you want to have the opportunity to attract the buyer, but you're the all the other team members in our office, which we're close to 200 agents, need to have the opportunity to help you boost your listing um, on social media, do open houses, market the property, and help you attract a buyer uh, in that marketing capacity, right? As well as um, nobody's our enemy here. We all work as a team. We're every brokerage, every buyer, every seller, every lender, every mortgage company. We're all involved in this process to try to have a meeting of the minds. Buyer wants to buy, seller wants to sell. Everybody's able and willing, and we want to make this a win-win situation. We just all happen to be part of the army that it takes to consummate a transaction. So once again, we want to uh, encourage our fellow real estate associates at other brokerages or internally to bring us their buyers. Because no doubt about it, we want a qualified buyer to be attracted to the home that we're listing. Okay. On Tuesday, I cover contracts from beginning to end and to include the addendum. On Wednesday, I cover the NAR forms, the short form and the long form. And Thursday, I cover the financing piece. Well, today I kick back to Monday because the reason why you want to collect full compensation is because if you're a brokerage that has at least 3 agents, one broker, 2 agents, you can be involved in intermediary with or without appointments. So um, that means that everybody um, involved is at the same brokerage. And therefore, certain things have to fall in place. The broker must function as the middle person, and one agent could do both transactions, or he could assign by appointment another agent. So you see why you need at least 3 agents to correctly give options and be able to consummate a deal where intermediary is involved. Um, the uh, The Texas Real Estate Commission has certain requirements if a brokerage is going to do intermediary. When you take on your exclusive right to list, and when you're selling your value proposition is, Mr. Seller, I do, it's in your interest that we do intermediary because there's a chance that one of our 200 agents already is working with a fully qualified or a cash buyer. We want to have your home as an option for our buyer, for that buyer, for somebody that already works in our brokerage. Um, so you always want to encourage the seller to do intermediary, as well as that's the reason you also want them to pay full commission. Because I mean, obviously, half of the commission belongs to the listing agent, but you might not be the buying agent. It might be somebody that you might not even know in this brokerage because there's so many agents. But that buyer's agent should have um, or should be compensated for their efforts working in 100-degree weather in delivering what is potentially a qualified buyer or their patch buyer or investor. Okay. So that's the reason you can't be taking on a listing for 3%. when there could be another agent in this office that could bring me a buyer. Because once again, no doubt about it, whether it's a buyer's agent from our office or outside of this brokerage, nobody's going to bring you a buyer if you're not paying compensation. It boils down to that, especially in this marketplace. In a year or 2 years from now, when the economy recuperates, absolutely. That, unfortunately, we will have to even fight harder for our compensation because the market will be more liquid. So when you're doing intermediary, encouraging intermediary, there must be compensation. So make sure that you collect six, seven, or eight, seven, or six. But don't do yourself a horrible injustice and say four, five, or six, because obviously the seller will want four or five. So give them an option: eight, seven, or six. Um, so the listings taken on with full commission, maybe even a bonus, especially in this marketplace. The seller has agreed to do intermediary. Conversely, if there is another agent in this office bringing you a buyer, it must be disclosed to the buyer through multiple forms. On your exclusive right to list to the seller, intermediary, you must check that off. Conversely, on your buyer's representation agreement, whether it be the short form or the long form, it covers intermediary. Those intermediaries should always be checked off. Okay. Um, Conversely, the other form that's a requirement is your information about brokerage services. That is a disclosure, general disclosure that it would be recommended that they're going to have to revise it because sub-agency is still being mentioned in the information about brokerage services. It no longer exists after this settlement, and it takes effect August 14th, no later than August 17th. You will have to have your buyer's rep agreement in place reflecting that your prospect is no prospect, that they are your client. There's no sub agency, there's no consumer, there's no prospect. If you're wanting information about real estate, you either represent the seller or you represent the buyer. Okay. Conversely, if you're going to go ahead and execute your buyer's representation agreements, you might as well get your information about brokerage services executed as well at the same time because it's a requirement thanks to this lawsuit. Okay. The other thing, so once again, sellers allowing intermediary. As luck would have it, one of our agents in our office is bringing the buyer, uh, and the buyer must allow intermediary through your representation agreement. Like I said, short form or long form, it must include intermediary. Furthermore, you have to include intermediary relationship notice on your contract on the informational page of the contract, which it's that one needs to still get revised because page 10 of 11 still has at the bottom the compensation noted. So I'm sure that they're still working on this. It will be an update probably in the next week or so, um, reflecting that this section of the contract needs to be deleted because your contract already states that the compensation's already been agreed in separate agreements before this contract. So your exclusive right to list has to be executed before you even put it on MLS. Um, with compensation to the listing brokerage, right? And if they're offering compensation, and then your buyer's representation agreement already outlines if you're in the existing market up to 4%, and if you're in the new home market up to 8%. Okay. So this section of page 10 and 11 will need to be deleted from the contract. I'm sure that Trek is working on it. But when you're disclosing intermediary, of course, you must check off. Obviously, Premier Realty Group is the brokerage, and seller only, I'm sorry, seller and buyer as intermediary would need to be checked off. Both agents, or if there's only one agent, would need to be on the right hand side of this form. Okay, and you should it should be outlined in your paperwork. Um, and then if we go back to intermediary relationship notice, In this case, what we did is that we did it by assignment. Okay, so there's two agents, one that represents the seller, and then the other agent represents the buyer. So the intermediary relationship notice must duplicate your disclosure on the informational page 10 of 11 of that this is intermediary and who are the players and their respective licenses, and obviously our broker. Okay, so if you guys ever have a question, I know that I always take questions during the day and after hours and weekends, but intermediary happens to be the number one topic that I cover with a lot of folks. We have a lot of agents that have a lot of listings, and intermediary is always an opportunity in our office. Okay. So, and I always will ask you questions to help you determine if you have created a client relationship. Okay. So if you're the listing agent and you're doing your own open house or you're putting up your own sign, and all of a sudden the neighbor walks across the street and tells you, "Hey, I want to buy the house. I'm already pre-approved at my credit union. I'm ready to go." You don't have to give them advice and opinion. You can just say, "Okay, just understand that I'm the listing agent. In this case, you're going to just check that you represent the seller, because you're getting ready to go live with the listing. You haven't given them any information. Here's my MLS. Here's the school district. Here's the square footage. You're giving just regular information, but you can treat them, let them know that you represent the seller and check off that you represent the seller. That's it. Now, if you give advice and opinion, well, then you could potentially create an intermediary. You're going to create an intermediary relationship where you could do it yourself, or you can bring on another agent if you don't feel comfortable doing it. Okay. And we have a lot of agents that do it on their own, both sides, but they never give out any information besides what is public record, or they bring in another agent because they don't even want to deal with the buyer because that's too risky for them. They don't feel comfortable with it. Whatever you want to do, I just need to know about it just to ensure that I am able to coach you and walk you through to ensure that everybody's in compliance. Because in our case, as a brokerage, we would have two agents, two sides, where we'd be paying a $2,500 deductible for each side. So that's $5,000. Okay. So, so remember, exclusive right to list must allow intermediary when you take on a client on the buying side, whether it be the short form or the long form, intermediary has to be allowed by the buyer. You need their permission to expose them to our inventory. If they tell you no, I want anybody but anybody from your firm doing both sides, you have to respect. But that means that 200 agents from this office can't show that house. Who's going to want to? Because then they're not going to be paid. So that's the reason it's in the best interest of the seller to agree to intermediary. Conversely, on the buying side, Mr. Buyer, you're calling me on by listing. Why wouldn't you agree to intermediary? You're going to be the first one that's going to get exposed to the inventory, because on our private chat, we know of listings that are coming our way even before they hit the market. So wouldn't you want to have an opportunity to walk through it or know about it? Because hopefully that property will already be off the market. We could probably negotiate the deal before it goes live while they declutter the house or whatever. Okay. So always get your buyer and your seller to agree to intermediary. It's in their best interest. Okay. Um, and know that you could do intermediary with appointments and without. And then, of course, the addenda that's required as well. We have a checklist for you guys, one specific for intermediary. So remember to use the correct checklist when you're involved in that transaction, and always remember to always call me. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody online has any questions? Okay. So don't get scared by intermediary. It is an opportunity for you to collect two commissions. You just need to know what you can say and what you cannot say. Okay. Um, so Keep an open mind. Let me know how we can help you. Myself and my team, we're always sure available to answer any questions that you may have because we're all about keeping you guys profitable. Okay. So go sell some real estate this weekend. Have a good weekend. Okay. Bye.